No one looked twice at him. Curled in the farthest corner of the shelter, his fur matted like old brush left in the rain. A single eye flickered in the half-light, wild, weary, watching. "He's impossible," the worker said flatly. 5 returns, bit 3 owners, ripped through walls, furniture, cages. He's part Bobcat. A single sentence, a silent death sentence. The tag on the metal door read, ASH in red ink, like a warning. And that should have been the end of it, until my husband bent down and said, "Let me try." And the air around us shifted. Ash wasn't a pet. He was a storm trapped in fur and sinew, eyes like gold fire trapped in shadow. They'd found him half-starved near the outskirts of the forest. No one knew where the wild stopped and the animal began. He tore through homes like a ghost with teeth. One family said he stared at their baby for hours, unmoving, unreadable. Another said he shredded a door just to escape the sound of a vacuum. Every return was quicker than the last. He wasn't adoptable, he wasn't safe, but he was still here. Ash wasn't a pet. He was a storm trapped in fur and sinew, eyes like gold fire trapped in shadow. They'd found him half-starved near the outskirts of the forest. No one knew where the wild stopped and the animal began. He tore through homes like a ghost with teeth. One family said he stared at their baby for hours, unmoving, unreadable. Another said he shredded a door just to escape the sound of a vacuum. Every return was quicker than the last. He wasn't adoptable, he wasn't safe, but he was still here. Alex was never one to look away from broken things. I had learned this long before we met Ash. He once spent 6 months rebuilding a rusted motorcycle just because someone said it was beyond repair. Our fixer-upper home was falling apart when we moved in, plumbing like arteries in collapse, a roof that leaked secrets. But he saw beauty buried beneath ruin. He always did. So, when we passed Ash's cage, and I moved on without a second thought, Alex didn't. He stood there in silence, like he had walked into a memory. I saw his shoulders square, his head tilt slightly, the quiet way he observed when he was listening to something no one else could hear. He didn't look at the scratches or the warning signs. He looked at Ash's eyes, and stayed. I whispered caution. "We can't. He's dangerous." You heard what the woman said. Alex didn't even nod. His gaze remained fixed. I saw it then. That peculiar fire in his expression. The same look he gave the first time he saw our collapsed porch and said, "It just needs trust and time." I hated that look, because I knew it meant he wasn't going to walk away. He crouched low, slowly, deliberately, the way someone approaches a wounded thing. The rescue worker approached warily, already shaking their head. "Please don't get too close," they warned. "He's unpredictable. He lashes out." But Alex was calm, gentle, grounded, like he'd stepped into a moment already written. Ash didn't growl. He didn't hiss. He simply stared, not with affection, but with a silence that seemed ancient. It was as though 2 wild things had found each other in a room full of people pretending to be tame. For a breathless moment, no one spoke. Ash didn't move, and that stillness was louder than anything else in the room. Alex whispered something I couldn't quite hear. It wasn't coaxing. It wasn't baby talk or a call to come closer. It sounded more like respect, like a promise. His hand didn't reach forward yet, just rested gently against the cage door. And even the air seemed to pause, as if waiting to see who would break first. When Alex finally moved his hand toward the latch, I felt panic twist in my chest. Not fear of injury, but fear of what it would mean if this failed. This was Ash's last chance, and if Alex opened that door and was met with teeth, there'd be no coming back from it, no redemption, no second look. The cage door clicked softly, the sound lost beneath my held breath. Ash remained still, body low, ears back, his eyes never breaking contact. The kind of stillness that speaks of lightning before the strike. Every warning we'd heard echoed in my mind. 5 families had tried. None lasted a week. Some didn't last a day. Alex's hand hovered just inside the door, palm open, fingers relaxed. He didn't move further, didn't beckon, just waited. Ash crept forward, not in trust, but in tension. Like every inch cost him something. His body was a bow pulled taut. One wrong breath and he'd snap. And then, impossibly, Ash stopped. Just inches away, nose twitching, breath short. He leaned forward, not quickly, but as if testing reality itself. A single moment of contact. His nose touched Alex's finger. No claws, no blood, just breathe. And it was everything. The entire room seemed to sigh. Even the staff, hardened by disappointment, stood speechless. Ash leaned his head into the hand, not gently, not affectionately, but deliberately. Like he had chosen this one human not because he trusted him, but because he dared to try. For the first time, Ash didn't need to run. He didn't need to fight. In that simple touch, there was no magic, no miracle, only a fragile understanding between two creatures who knew what it meant to be unwanted and chose to stay anyway. The carrier was placed in the back seat with the reverence of something sacred or dangerous. Ash sat inside, silent, unmoving, his golden eyes scanning the blur of trees, houses, sky. The hum of the car didn't soothe him. He wasn't like other cats who curled up once the motion began. Ash stayed upright, alert, unblinking, like a soldier returning from a war that never ended. I sat beside the cage, one hand near the bars, not touching, just close enough to feel the invisible line between us. His presence filled the space like heat from a wildfire. Beautiful, threatening, alive. Alex drove with one hand on the wheel, his other resting on his knee, his jaw tight with focus. He didn't say much, just glanced at Ash through the mirror again and again, as if confirming the creature hadn't vanished. Or combusted. I asked him again, soft but insistent. What if this doesn't work? He didn't look at me, just said, we'll make space for him to learn it can. And maybe that was what love looked like, not a flood of emotion or sweeping promises, but the quiet conviction that damage didn't mean doom, that survival wasn't the same as living. Ash let out one short growl, not hostile, just a warning. He wasn't asleep. He wasn't calm. He was waiting. This home we were bringing him to. It wasn't salvation yet. It was another unknown room with unknown smells and the inevitable fear of betrayal creeping like static in the air. I thought of Luna, our old queen of comfort, who had ruled the living room like a throne. She didn't deserve this chaos. And Ash, maybe he didn't deserve her world either. But Alex only said, we're not asking him to change. We're asking him to be seen. And that, I realized, was exactly what no one else had done. As we pulled into the driveway, Ash's tail flicked once, slow and heavy. I don't know if it was instinct or recognition, but something in him shifted. This wasn't a place built for bobcats. It was a place built for healing. And sometimes, that was even harder to survive. We didn't open the cage, not yet. Ash sat in the center of the living room, his world confined by steel and shadow. Luna was nowhere to be seen. The air was thick with unsaid words. A storm suspended midair. We laid out everything the rescue center suggested. A litter box tucked in a quiet corner, a scratch post beside the window, bowls of water and food placed gently beside the cage. Alex crouched nearby, speaking in low tones, not meant to soothe, but to normalize. To let Ash know this house had no expectations yet, only space. We turned off the lights slowly, left the door open a crack. Ash didn't sleep. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, two moons watching a foreign land. I could hear his claws occasionally tapping the metal floor, the shuffle of movement as he changed positions restlessly. The wild in him didn't recognize the softness in our home. At midnight, the first sound shattered the silence. A crash so sudden I sat up in bed, breath caught. Alex was already moving, his feet silent against the floor as he followed the noise. I trailed behind, afraid of what we might find. And there it was, chaos incarnate. Ash had torn through the room like a tempest in fur. Books strewn across the floor, curtains downed in a heap, the rug twisted like a wounded thing. And in the center of it all, Ash, panting, high on the shelf, his tail flicking like a whip, his mouth open in a snarl, warning us to keep back. I wanted to scream, to shout about the damage, the danger, the madness of this decision. But Alex didn't. He just sat down on the ground, right there amid the wreckage. No words, no movement, just presence. And though Ash hissed again, he didn't leap. He watched and waited. Because for the first time, no one was trying to cage him again. I woke before the sun, heart pounding, the nightmare of broken vases and shredded fabric still fresh on my skin. The bedroom door creaked softly as I slipped through. The living room was a battlefield, but there, in the quiet morning light, a miracle. Alex was asleep, curled up like a child beneath the remnants of a blanket, his breathing deep and steady. And pressed against him, like a wounded soldier finally letting down his guard, was Ash. Not looming, not guarding, but resting, softly, silently, his head against Alex's shoulder. I covered my mouth, not from fear, but because tears arrived uninvited, the way they do when something unexplainable touches the soul. Ash hadn't been tamed. He hadn't been tamed. He hadn't been trained. He had simply chosen to let down his defenses for a single night. The golden light filtered in slowly, casting lines across the wreckage. I could see every scratch on the wall, every torn fiber of fabric. But all I could focus on was that fragile stillness. A wild creature asleep beside a man who refused to walk away. I knelt near them, careful not to wake the spell. Ash's ears twitched, but he didn't stir. His tail flicked once, not in warning, but in rhythm. A heartbeat. A truce. In that moment, I understood what Alex had seen all along. Ash wasn't a problem to solve. He wasn't a risk to manage. He was a soul in exile, waiting for someone brave enough to sit with his silence long enough for it to speak. The days that followed moved slow, like molasses dripping through fingers. Ash didn't immediately transform. He still growled if anyone moved too fast, still flinched at unfamiliar sounds, still circled the room like a sentry patrolling a war zone. But his claws stayed in, his gaze lingered longer, and he no longer pressed against the cage bars like a prisoner awaiting execution. Luna returned, but not close. She found high places, secret corners, safe zones behind furniture. We never forced a meeting. She would peek from the top of the kitchen cabinet, wide-eyed and silent, while Ash sunned himself on the rug below, pretending not to notice her fear, perhaps understanding it. Ash didn't purr. He didn't rub his body against our legs or curl into laps. But sometimes, when Alex sat on the couch reading, Ash would sit near his feet, close enough to touch but not inviting it. That space, the thin breath between closeness and distance, was sacred. It meant, I see you, and I am not afraid. We gave up trying to teach him tricks. He wasn't a pet, after all. He was a survivor who had finally been allowed to rest. And in that rest, new rituals were born. He'd leap onto the windowsill at dawn, watching the world he didn't belong to, and return when the house fell quiet again. Every tiny act felt monumental. The first time he batted at a toy. The first time he let my fingers graze his fur without retreat. The first time Luna crossed the hallway without fleeing. We were building something not soft, but solid, like a bridge suspended over a history of mistrust. Alex never praised the progress. He just kept showing up. Book in hand, presence unwavering. Ash had tested every inch of him, and Alex had answered not with control, but with constancy. That was love, I realized. Not the love of leashes and commands, but of permission, of patience, of letting the storm be until it no longer needed to rage. It wasn't marked by a single grand gesture, no cinematic leap into arms. Just a quiet evening, 3 months in. Alex was stretched out on the floor, papers scattered around him like autumn leaves. Ash approached slowly, unannounced. Not with the posture of fear or challenge, but like a whisper that had finally found words. He curled beside Alex, not near, not close, his side pressed against Alex's hip. No growl, no flinch, just contact. Unapologetic, unafraid, as if to say, I am not visiting anymore. I am home. Luna watched from the stairs, unmoving. Then, in an act so quiet it might have gone unnoticed, she descended one step. Only one. But that step was louder than thunder. The house, once divided by scent and silence, had just cracked open. We stopped explaining Ash to visitors. He didn't belong in stories of rescue miracles or reformed animals. He wasn't a before and after photo. He was a soul who had weathered abandonment 5 times, each one chipping away at his belief in continuity, until one man held out a hand and didn't take it back. Now, Ash sleeps on the windowsill at night, watching the stars with eyes that have finally softened. Luna naps 2 feet away, close enough to hear his breathing. And Alex, my impossible husband, still believes that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. It just means someone has to stay long enough to help the cracks learn how to hold light. People still ask us why we kept him, why risk it, why take in a creature that others had given up on. But the truth is simple. Nobody wanted the Bobcat until my husband held him once and never let go.